Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about growth. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how can a software engineer be intentional about developing a growth mindset? Well, it depends. I would say if you're talking about your own personal growth, or if you're talking about like the product or the company or something like that. And being intentional about it is it's really a matter of visualizing some type of desired end state that you have, and then working towards that end state with concrete projects or initiatives that you take. So an example would be if you are running a small business or something like that, then your growth or your desire to grow as as a company might be that you want to increase your customer base or your revenue or something like that to a certain point. And then you have that as you basically commit to saying that this is the thing that we're going to focus on, and then you have to think about, all right, what concrete steps can I take that will benefit that end goal. It's the same thing for like an athlete or someone who wants to lose some weight or something like that. You're basically in a state where you have to decide upon what you want, what do you want to achieve, and then figure out what are things that will benefit that goal. And this developing that is not really the problem. I think that most people will be able to figure that one out, because as I said, it's that simple. You could do it right now. The problem is sticking with it. That's the thing. The discipline necessary, the commitment necessary to make something like that happen. And I've always argued that I don't believe that anyone can do something under duress or under without really wanting it over a very because a lot of this stuff is, I mean, if you're a small business owner or something like that, you can probably testify as to how much work goes into something like that on average, especially if you want to grow the thing. And I have friends who are doing these sorts of things where they work more harder than anybody I've ever seen, and can in some cases not even make it to those goals because it is a big investment. And so it requires you to have a certain love for what you do. And if you talk about personal development, it's the same sort of thing. I can give you sort of what I've done and what's been working for me, and then hopefully maybe that's going to give you some ideas. So basically the way that I have tried to structure my personal growth has to do with the fact that I want to master all the things that are necessary in order to run basically any digital product, or in this case it's web, of course, but I don't necessarily restrict it to that. But right now it's a web platform of some whatever size it might be. And it started as simply as, I went into school and I loved working with backend because we were doing like primarily backend work when I was starting out. And then I realized that in order for me to ship like a real full-fledged system or something, build like actual things without having to be completely dependent on somebody else, I needed to learn the front end as well. So I sat down and I learned the front end, and took a job as a full stack developer. Worked for a while as a full stack developer, and then there was more development in the front end spaces, and so I took a job as a front end developer. Then I went back to full stack development because I saw an opportunity to continue my growth as a full stack developer. Then I got hired as after working as a full stack and a front end developer for a few years, I realized that now I know how to, basically I know how to do everything in terms of producing an application, a web application. There's nothing I'm not going to claim that I'm the best in the world at it because it's such a huge area, but you can ask me to build basically, I felt confident in that there is no website that you could show me practically unless it's something highly specialized with, like, I don't know, 3D graphics or WebAssembly, or if it's something where you're using like sophisticated graphics with drawing on canvases or so forth. But if we're talking like a standard web application, everything from Facebook's web pages or something similar to that, then yes, I know how to build the application part of that and make the UI look the way it's supposed to look and so forth and so forth. And then I realized that, alright, so now in order to do the next thing, well, what's left? Well, what's left is to figure out, okay, how do I host this thing? Like, how do I make this thing run on the web and like register domains and so forth? How do I set up Kubernetes, or if I'm going to use containers, for example, or if I'm just going to use a VM, because there are many ways to host an application. Okay, Lambda functions, what's that about? How do I learn how to use these sorts of tools, right? And so it becomes more of a question of, all right, let's learn all the different things about cloud infrastructure. And then when I started feeling more comfortable with that, that's also a huge area, so it's not like I'm a master of that, I would say. But then comes questions about security, development processes, leading teams. How do you do that? And so forth and so forth. So it sort of organically grew, and my interest in becoming someone who can basically deliver anything by myself was the thing that helped me grow. And that interest was the main, it's the main thing. And so for you to do something similar, you will need something to drive you. It's sort of, I tell people the same thing. If you want to get into shape, for example, if you don't care about your fitness level, then nothing in this world is going to make you want to exercise and eat healthy and make these sorts of sacrifices, because you're not going to commit to it, because these things are not important to you. You might not have an issue, like you don't feel a need to watch your weight or whatever it might be, right? And then there's little else to be done because your motivation isn't there. So developing the growth mindset, as I said, that's, in my opinion, that's the easy thing. It really comes down to identifying the goals, and then sticking to those goals is the thing that is the real challenge. So what I want you to take away from this is that the suggestion that I can make to you when you're talking about in developing a growth mindset is that you need to identify what your goals are, what you want to achieve. Break those goals down into activities, things that you need to be doing. So an example would be, if you have a business, well, you may need to have a full client base, or allocate enough projects so that you have work to do. And if you have maximized your time, you have so many clients that you can at this point not add more customers to your customer base, then you need to either increase prices or hire more people and then grow the business that way. These sorts of constructive things you can do, and that might be, alright, you have to make a certain amount of calls, or you might have to go and connect with a certain amount of people at networking events, etc., etc. You have to do these sorts of activities. If you want to lose weight, it's the same thing. You have to count your calories. You have to exercise a certain amount of time, etc., etc. For us software developers, it's the same thing. If you want to grow as a software developer, well, the first thing is to basically honestly answer the question for yourself. Can I do the thing that I care about doing? And then when you say that, yeah, I can do this thing, I feel fairly comfortable doing it, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be the world's best at it. It's just something that you know that you can do, and you have consistently proven to yourself that, yeah, I can build this website, or I can build this thing, I can write tests, I can do whatever it is I might want to do. And when that is sort of obvious to you, then the next thing has to take a hold. And when you continue for long enough, these days, guys, the thing that I'm more focused on today has less to do with this understanding how to run an entire IT company, because I've reached a point where I'm not going to claim that I can, at the top of my head, remember all the different commands for every tool that I'm using or so forth, but I know, because I've done it several times, I know that I can get everything up in the cloud. I know I can set up the entire website with all the necessary configurations, and setting up the projects for the repositories, build all the code, ship all the code, test all the code, run like an agile team. I know I can get specifications, etc., because this is sort of this is at least where I am right now in my career. These are things I do on a daily basis, or like fairly often at the very least. So now for me, the next thing is, okay, what comes after that? And for me right now, that's machine learning and AI development, because that's an area I don't really know all that much about. So that's the next thing, right? And this is the pattern that you should follow if you want to actually be intentional about your growth. You have to commit to certain goals that you want to master, or like skills that you want to acquire, and then prove to yourself that actually, yeah, I can do these sorts of things. And my suggestion is, as I said, create these activities, and then a way of proving that you have learned this thing. So for me, for an example, in machine learning, well, I know that I have understood machine learning when I know the basic ways that you can use different neural networks in order to achieve certain ends, such as classification, or like regression problems, or it might be like whatever it might be, right? It comes down to setting up some small goal projects and seeing, yeah, I actually understand how to do this thing, and then practices until I know that, yeah, if somebody asks me to analyze their data or something like that, or implement a machine learning algorithm, it would be pretty much the same sort of deal for me as if they asked me to code or like build a website or something like that. It's something that, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable and I know how to do that. Have a great day.